Hi, welcome to Christine's Corner, no longer Kids Corner. I'm glad you made it. And tune in next week too. Today we have, to my left is Jean Kelly. She is a retired librarian from the Plainville Library. And you're going to get a treat today. She's going to read some more books if you haven't seen her. Like this book, Sophia, but she's going to tell you the name of the book and the author. So get your pillows and your popcorn ready. Let's hear a story. Go ahead, Jean.
Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
It's a pleasure to be back again.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you. I love it.
Thank you very, very much. Today we are going to read 2 books about people with disabilities and how they overcome these disabilities and lead wonderful, happy, successful lives. And the first book that we're reading is entitled Coach Bob and Me, and the author is Catherine Gibson, who is a Connecticut resident and writes wonderful stories that we're enjoying so much. As I walked into the lunchroom at school one day, I noticed Coach Bob sitting at his usual table eating lunch. He liked sitting by the open window, watching the kids play football. Sometimes the entire team would join him. Everyone seemed to enjoy that, especially the coach. Not just athletes came to Coach Bob for advice. He was always willing to help anyone who needed it, and he seemed to really care about the students. He was well respected, loved by his students, and moved around so easily that people seemed to forget that he was in a wheelchair. At times, it made me feel sad to see him unable to walk. I often wondered what his life would be like if he hadn't had the accident. He never talked about it. He seemed content in spite of it all. There was a certain excitement about the arrival of fall, the wind howling, leaves around the crisp air. People seemed to have so much more energy. It was a beautiful autumn day, and everybody wanted to play football, including me. I had never tried out for the team. I had never felt good enough to even try. Still, I enjoyed playing and managed to practice with the others who, like me, weren't on the team.
Just hold the book flat.
There were some guys on the team who thought they were pretty cool. Too cool. Once in a while in the hallway, they would intentionally bump into me while I was getting a book from my locker. As my papers spilled out onto the floor, they would laugh. I usually ate alone in the cafeteria, and there were times when they would walk by my lunch table and nudge it, spilling my drink everywhere. Although I wasn't on the team, there were a few of us who would go to the weight room during our free time and lift weights. I knew that football players should lift whenever they could to improve their strength. Most of the guys on the football team were stronger than me, but I didn't let that bother me. My brother, Tyler, encouraged me to use his weights and lift at home. I didn't feel very strong, and I didn't think I could lift much, but I still kept at it. One afternoon, Coach came into the weight room to check on us. I think he could tell that I was trying my best, and he was very encouraging. He told me he thought I was looking stronger, which was great to hear. Our gym class, taught by the team's head coach, Coach Kelly, met on the track the following week. He told us we were going to be tested in 3 categories: running, distance jumping, and on our lifting skills in the weight room. When we went back inside, I was surprised to see that there were only a couple of guys on the football team that could lift more weight than me. They seemed surprised to see what I could do, and I felt pretty good about it. The following day, I showed up early for lunch and was sitting alone. It was another perfect day for football. Coach Bob was early too and stopped by my table. "Great job yesterday, Stefan," Coach Cully told me. "You've been working pretty hard in the weight room. Why don't you join us over at my table?" "No thanks," I replied, adding, "I'm not interested in this book about football. I'm interested in this book about football, and it's pretty good, so I don't mind sitting alone right now." I showed him the book, which he looked at for a minute and said, "This is a great book. It looks like there are some good strategies in here. Tell you what, Stefan, once you've finished eating, why don't you bring the book over and show the guys?" "Some of those guys are never very friendly to me, Coach," I told him. He seemed to understand and answered that they could be a bit overconfident at times. "Well, keep plugging away. You're doing a great job. Join us after your lunch if you'd like." Not long afterwards, Coach Bob encouraged me to come over and sit at an empty seat at his table and told the team about my book. The coach took time to speak to us about the importance of good sportsmanship.
Keep the book on your bed.
The next thing you know, Coach Bob had picked up my book and pointed out some plays that he wanted the team to practice. As the week went by, I began to feel more like I belonged when I would see the guys from the team in the hallway between classes. They were friendlier toward me, gave me high fives or yelled out, "Hey, Stefan, how's it going?" My life seems to have taken a turn for the better. My mind continued to focus on how Coach's accident had changed his life. If only I was able to go back in time like they do in a movie or in a television program to change the outcome. That Friday, Coach Bob came by my locker just before lunch. "Hey, buddy, where have you been?" he asked with a smile. "I ordered team t-shirts and thought you might like one. Here's one, try it on." It felt pretty good, and best of all, it made me feel like I was a part of the team. Taking me aside, he said, "What seems to be bugging you today, lately?" Quietly, I told him that I had been thinking about his accident and what his life would have been like if it hadn't happened. In a reassuring voice, he answered, "Thanks for your concern, Stephen, but I'm okay with it. When I was a young boy, I watched sports all the time and read everything that I could about sports. I always wanted to be a coach." Coach Bob continued, "After my accident, I went through a tough time, but it made me focus on what I wanted to accomplish. I spent a lot of time in the hospital and realized it was more important than ever for me to be on the field, even if I was in a wheelchair. It made me want to work harder than ever to become a coach." Coach added, "There is another example of strength. I'm proud of you, Stefan. You can do anything you want to if you try hard enough. The truth is, I probably wouldn't be as good a coach now if I hadn't had the accident. It made me more determined to do what I really wanted with my own life. After learning from my experience, I am glad to help others. Thanks for all the help you've given me, Coach. I notice that whenever you enter a room, there is either someone shouting out your name or giving you a pat on the back. You have so many friends. That's true, Stefan. It proves that there's more to life than simply playing on a field. That afternoon, we were on the field until it was nearly dark. Coach Bob made us take time out to notice the colorful day. Always remember to take some time to look at the big picture in life, he reminded us. Taking us by surprise, he switched gears and said, "Okay, let's get moving." After a few more plays, I thought about how great it was to finally be part of a team. The next morning, I grabbed my backpack and headed out the door to school. Thinking about the events of the last several weeks, I realized how my outlook on life had changed. Through Coach Bob's experience, I had learned that overcoming a challenge in life can help you identify your goals. I knew that whether we won the biggest game of the season or not wasn't really important. It was knowing that what you want and going for it. Coach Bob believed in me, and his friendship was the best part of all. Wasn't Coach Bob a wonderful man?
That was excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great story.
Yes, you can just keep the book right on your
Okay,
lap.
and now we're going to tell a story about a young woman called Sophie, who also lived with a disadvantage, but how she overcame it.
"15 minutes.
And this is called Through Sophie's Eyes. And there's wonderful pictures in all these books. In a small town, not too far from here, lived a girl named Sophie. She was like most other girls her age, except she could not hear or speak. Sophie was deaf. To communicate, she would read people's lips and speak with her hands using the sign language of the deaf. Sophie loved to draw pictures, read fairy tales, but most of all, she loved to dance. One of Sophie's favorite things to do was to watch people dance on television. She would look for all old movies that had dancing in them and pretend she was one of the dancers and the stars. Once, Sophie went to a beautiful wedding and was fascinated by all the people spinning and twirling on the dance floor. She watched as the ladies were spun around in their pretty dresses and high-heeled shoes. She was in awe of their gentle and graceful mannerisms. While everybody was dancing, Sophie found herself feeling the vibrations of the music coming through the dance floor. She too was swaying and dancing, just like the other guests. Sophie's mum also loved to dance. The two of them would dance together for hours. They would move the furniture around and turn the living room into a dance area. One day, Sophie's mom decided to surprise Sophie with a little dance area in her bedroom. While Sophie was at school, her mum had long mirrors and a wooden ballet bar put in her room. It looked like a real dance studio. While Sophie came home that day, she was so surprised. She never would have imagined having her own dance studio. The only thing that was missing were other dancers to dance with. The next day, Sophie went to school with a big smile on her face. She still couldn't believe she had her very own dance area. As she sat at her desk, the teacher passed out a flyer to the class. The flyer was from the local dance studio. They were offering dance lessons to the students of the school. Sophie was so excited, she couldn't wait to share the news with her mum. While on the bus traveling home, Sophie started daydreaming about taking dance lessons at the dance studio. When the bus stopped in front of Sophie's house, she leapt off the bus and went running inside. She ran right up to her mum and handed her the flyer. Sophie quickly signed, "Can I take dance lessons? Can I?" At first, her mum was worried and signed. The girls that take dance lessons can hear the music. They can listen for the teacher's instructions. It might be too hard for you. Sophie signed back, "Mum, I could watch the teacher and follow. I don't need to hear the music. I can feel it." Her mum smiled and signed back, "Okay, we can try it." Sophie jumped up and down, signed to her mum, "Thank you, thank you." The next day after school, Sophie's mum took her to the dance studio. As Sophie entered, she stopped and looked all around the room. The dance room was just as she had imagined. It was a large room with floor-to-ceiling mirrors and a wooden ballet bar that just went down the entire side of the wall. The dance teacher went over to greet them. Sophie signed, "Hello, my name is Sophie. I'm excited to take dance lessons." The teacher signed back, "Hello, Sophie. My name is Miss Helm. I am glad you are excited to take dance lessons. We will have lots of fun." Sophie and her mum were happily surprised that Miss Helen knew sign language. It was time for the dance lesson to begin. Miss Helen brought Sophie to the center of the room and introduced her to the class. Sophie signed to the girls, "Hello, my name is Sophie." The girls looked puzzled as Sophie used sign language to greet them. When the class started, Miss Helen signed to Sophie to line up with the other girls at the ballet bar. While the girls were in line, they whispered to one another, covering their mouths so that Sophie couldn't read their lips. Sophie knew they were whispering about her. She tried to be brave, but tears began to slowly fall down her cheeks. Miss Helen noticed Sophie was upset. She signed to Sophie, "Are you okay? Do you want to stop for the day?" Sophie dried her tears and signed back to Miss Helen, "I will be okay. I want to dance." Miss Helen noticed the girls were not being that nice to Sophie. When class ended for the day, Sophie quickly grabbed her stuff and left. Miss Helen asked the other girls to stay. She told the girls to start stretching and she would be right back. She went to her office and returned shortly with a bag of cotton. She had all the girls take a piece of cotton and put it in their ears. Miss Helen told the girls they would be dancing without music, like Sophie. Miss Helen signaled the girls to line up in the center of the room. She told them they could not rely on their ears to listen for the music or instructions. They had to use their other senses and feel the rhythm of the movements. Miss Helen used her hand motions and body language to guide the girls. The girls began to stumble over one another as they tried to keep their eyes focused on Miss Helen. They were tired and out of breath as they tried to find the rhythm. They did not realize how difficult it was to dance without hearing the music. When Sophie got home, her mother asked, "How was dance class?" Sophie told her mum how the girls treated her, and she began to cry. She signed to her mum, "The girls think because I'm deaf, I can't dance." Her mother replied, as she softly wiped away the tears from her face, "Oh, Sophie, you are a wonderful dancer. Don't worry about what the other girls think. Not being able to hear is only part of who you are. You have a special gift that allows you to use dancing as a way to express yourself. You should celebrate who you are. I do." The next day, Sophie decided to walk to dance class. She knew she could show the girls that she was a good dancer. As she was walking, it started to rain. The rain was like music to Sophie. She looked up and smiled as the raindrops tiptoed on her face. Sophie leaped and splashed through the puddles all the way to dance class. When Sophie arrived at the dance studio, she quickly changed from her wet shoes to her ballet slippers. While stretching for class, Sophie noticed that the other girls were smiling at her. One of them even waved and motioned for her to stand next to her at the wooden bar. Miss Helen began the class, and everybody watched for her instructions. Sophie noticed that Miss Helen did not turn the music on. She also noticed that Miss Helen did not give any verbal instructions. She was only using her body movements and hand signals. It put out a smile on Sophie's face when she realized that the girls were learning to dance through her eyes. They were seeing what it was like for her every day. As the weeks went on, the girls prepared for their solo performances. Sophie practiced and practiced. It was finally Sophie's day to do her solo performance. She thought to herself, "I can do this. I love to dance. I am ready." Sophie was nervous, yet excited. She slowly walked to the center of the room and saw everyone's eyes on her. She got into her dance position, took a deep breath, and waited to feel the music. And then she danced and danced and danced. The girls watched in awe. They started whispering again, but this time they did not cover their mouth. They were all saying that Sophie was beautiful. She was graceful. She was a ballerina. At the end of Sophie's dance, she glanced over to the other dancers to see their reaction. She saw smiles on their faces as they clapped and cheered for her. Sophie could not have been happier. As she curtsied, the dancers ran to the center of the room to join her. They all formed a circle, holding each other's hands, and danced together. Everyone realized that you do not need to be able to hear the music to be a great dancer, and she was. The girls curtsied goodbye to Miss Helen, bugged each other, and left class with a great lesson learned. That night, as Sophie's mum tucked her into bed, Sophie told her mum how proud she felt about her performance and how she loved her dance class. The girls were so happy for me, Sophie sighed. As her mum sat on the side of the bed, she brushed her hand through Sophie's hair and then sighed, "I'm so proud of you. I knew the girls would see your gift to dance." As her mum got up from the side of the bed, Sophie signed to her, "I love you." Now, wasn't that a wonderful story of how to overcome difficulties? And we all have some difficulties in our life, and they all can be overcome. And do we have another book?
No, we've run out of time, Jean. Thank you very much for coming and reading. An excellent job of reading
thank you.
Sophie's
A pleasure.
books. And thank you for watching Christine's Corner. We'll see you again next week. Thank you for joining us.